This is the Russian Dynamite, Masha Slamovich.
Becca here.
This is not America's Sweetheart, Davian. And
It's Billy Starks. And
the super fly guy, Trayvon Jordan.
This is the fly side flyer, Jalen Brandon.
Hardcore Princess Jules Malone.
Hi there, this is the Bubblegum Princess, Alexia Nicole.
This is the Brazilian Wonder Woman, Christy Jane. This is the baddest black belt, Chennai Kai.
This is Kid Bandit.
The smash hit Joel Bateman.
This is Robin Renegade.
Cody Hawk.
Brutal Bob Evans. And you are listening to Wrestling with Entertainment, one of my favorite podcasts in the whole wide world.
It is I, the human monster truck, Perry Von Vicious, and you're listening to Wrestling with Entertainment.
Hello, and welcome to the show with Wrestling with Entertainment, the only audio experience on the web today, previewing and reviewing the latest shows from WWE, AEW, New Japan, and everything in between every Saturday, and interviewing all your favorite wrestlers every Wednesday on YouTube and Castbox, sponsored by Rogue Energy and Player One Coffee. I am, of course, your host, James J., alongside Scooter Dust.
Greetings. What? Were you expecting a terrible joke?
And it is a great day for wrestling, because we are wrestling with
the human monster truck, Perry Von Vicious!
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on.
So much. We've been looking forward to this for quite some time.
Can you tell us what you got coming up?
Yeah. I actually have a pretty big show coming just this Friday, July 1st. I will be wrestling for Pro Wrestling Grind in East Hampton. Taking on a Limitless Wrestling mainstay and someone most people know as a frequent tag partner of mine. I will be going one-on-one with Iron Rip Byson. Really, in a lot of ways, looking forward to that. And if anyone's ever watched Rip wrestle, they'll understand there's a lot of reasons I'm not looking forward to it.
It's interesting you say you're looking forward to it, considering that's how your tag team came to be.
That's exactly right.
And of course, where can we find you on your social media and merchandise? We know you got it.
Yeah. I recently was dubbed the Merch God by Delmi Exo after I outsold her to an embarrassing degree when we were down in Tennessee. You can find me on social media. I'm basically on all the main social medias, and it is always just at Perry Von Vicious. That's on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. You can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Perry Von Vicious. And I'm probably missing some others, but if you type that in, a pretty good chance you're finding me. And as far as my merch goes, I have a store on PWTs. I think I've still got a couple others floating around, but the main one I use is actually Brainbuster Tees. And when you do find me on social media, I've got the little link in my bio, and when you open it, it is the first link right at the top of the list there. You can't miss it.
And you don't even have to go looking for those links. They will
be in the description of the video below,
or on YouTube and Castbox. And whatever you missed, those links will be in the description as well. All right, let's get into it. You work for Limitless and NEW. Can you tell us about your relationship with those companies?
Yeah. So, Limitless Wrestling, is obviously here in New England an absolute mainstay. They're kind of really they're the top of the food chain, and I'm not there all the time. I've worked much more for. They sort of have a second company called Let's Wrestle. That's sort of their feeder company. I've been a more frequent mainstay there, and then I've done spots here and there for Limitless. including occasionally standing in as the backstage interviewer, which is a very different role from who I am between the ropes. I do a lot of crouching low so I don't make anyone look short. Um, and yeah, these days, the places you're most likely to see me are with Let's Wrestle and Limitless, with Grind, Pro Wrestling Grind down here in Massachusetts, and with Blitzkrieg Pro. Those are the places I'm at most frequently, and then who knows? I pop up all over the place, kind of sporadically. Just this past week, I mentioned in passing, me and a whole crew of us from Pro Wrestling Grind ran a little loop through the South. We went down and wrestled for Uncharted Territory in Chattanooga, and the day before that, we wrestled for Sup Graps in Nashville. So yeah, I get around. I go where the bookings are.
Oh, definitely. Scooter, you have a question.
Yes, we'd like to start with a little lightheartedness, a little levity, if you will, here on Wrestling With. Can you tell us, in choosing your ring name, what made you choose the German originating Von, which is commonly found in Dutch and Vietnamese surnames?
Oh, that's a really interesting question, and one I've not been asked before.
And there's
Uh,
a question about the first name as well, but we'll get to that in a minute.
yep. I mean, I can kind of give it all in one. So, uh, when I was in college, right around the time I was getting ready to take the dive into pro wrestling, I graduated in '07, in May, and then in September started training. And in January of '08 had my first match. I knew that was coming about a month ahead of time, and realized I needed to figure out a name to use because my real name is not terribly interesting. So I wanted something kind of cool and kind of different, and I hadn't even picked a character or persona in any way. I hadn't put much thought into it. I was mostly worried at the time, being a very heavy set guy. I was about 300 pounds. I was mostly worried about just not getting hurt. So when the time came to kind of put the bells and whistles on, I had been talked into doing a rich guy persona by some of the other students in my class, and I wanted something that sounded really snotty and really snobby. And I played around with a bunch of names, and I was sort of leaning on. I think I had worked the name up in my head as being Perry Van Eldridge the Third or something like that. And the Perry came from two places. It was Dr. Perry Cox from Scrubs,
Yes.
and also my best friend, who was my roommate at the time. His last name was Perry, so it felt like, okay, this is a good first name. I've got something to work from. And I pitched whatever ridiculous, that Perry Van something something to the guys in my class, and the brilliant and I think deeply underrated Johnny Torres was in my graduating class, and now people would mostly know him as one of the announcers for Limitless, Grind, and Blitzkrieg. And he kind of chuckled and looked at me and said, "Ha ha, you should be Perry Von Vicious." Just mocking the name altogether, like he thought that was the corniest name he could think of. And in my head, my brain immediately went, "Oh, that's so good." And that was it. I was sold. There was no conversation about a different name after that. That was the name, 100%. So as far as the Vaughn, it was accidental and suggested by someone else. And then I really didn't put any other thought into it. All of the different uh, uh, nationalities you mentioned and all the different backgrounds that fit the sort of Vaughn, not one of those falls in my actual bloodline, so I can't claim that. No, my background is as boring as can be. I'm a half Polish, half Irish, which explains why I'm so pale all the time.
And the other half, we won't even begin to bring up what's associated with that. All right, James, you have a question.
Well, one of your ring names before Perry Von Vicious was Andy Licious.
I think you had told me ahead of time that you guys do a lot of back research on this stuff and try to ask different questions, and
Yep.
that is proving to be the case. So I actually did debut as Perry Von Vicious. I was a few shows in, and it was just a fair show I was on, where they told me, I don't know, 30 seconds before I was supposed to go through the curtain, they said, "Hey, we need you to be a good guy tonight, and you need to use a different name because Perry Von Vicious is a terrible good guy name," which now, 14 years on, I am proving them to be way off because I'm a good guy everywhere and people love it. But I had to come up with a new name on the spot with like 30 my opponent was already in the ring. And I kind of looked at him and I said, my gear says Vicious on it. And they said, I don't know, work it in. And I thought, and I was like, maybe Vicious is my nickname. Maybe I'm Vicious something. And my brother's name is Andy. So I said, oh, I'll be Vicious Andy. And as soon as I said it out loud, the end of it came. So I was Vicious Andy Licious. Which, yeah, just really honestly, just as corny as Perry Von Vicious.
If it's one thing we love here on Wrestling With, it's wordplay.
Yes.
Oh, I'm the same way. I did stand-up comedy for a number of years in California, and my entire set was pretty much just puns and one-liners, very much constructed on the fact that I was an English major and a huge nerd.
But speaking of stand-up comedy, I love the fact that you built your routine on that dad joke, that was bad pun type of comedy. Absolutely hilarious. But going back to the name, you like to be billed as Uncle Sid's favorite nephew. And I know his son Frank from his time on Big Brother when I did Exit Press for CBS. Has there ever been an official endorsement from the Udy family or Uncle Sid, and would you ever decide to be Perry Von Justice?
Perry Von Justice. That has never entered my mind, and I kind of love it. The irony being that the roommate that I spoke of, whose last name is Perry, his first name is Justice.
Oh
So that had not occurred to me. But I don't think I would use the Justice last name. I've at this point it's sunken cost fallacy. I've been wrestling as Perry Von Vicious for 14 and a half years. I think I'm just going to plow through with it until the wheels fall off. But as far as an official endorsement from the Udy family from Uncle Sid himself, years ago when he had his first Twitter account, he's gone through a couple. I tweeted a picture of me doing a power bomb, and it was the first time I ever made the joke where I just said, "I bet old Uncle Sid would approve," and I tagged him, and he responded back with the fist bump emoji and started following me, and that was it. I didn't press it. I was like, "That's pretty cool." And then a little while later, I tweeted just as a joke because I had added Uncle Sid's favorite nephew to my Twitter bio. I tweeted on some random day, apropos of nothing. I just tweeted, headed to a family reunion this weekend. Heard Uncle Sid isn't making it. Want me to pick you up some potato salad with a question mark, and then tagged him. And he wrote back. He said, "Send all my love to your parents. No, I won't make it. XOXO, Uncle Sid." So he did refer to himself as Uncle Sid in a tweet at me once. So that's about as official as I ever got for approval for that.
I think that's as official as you need.
Yeah, he played along, which made me happy.
Absolutely love it. That is absolutely incredible. And Perry Von Justice, that's a freebie from us.
That's really good.
Oh, believe me, we could go into a whole other tangent about names we suggested. But James, you have a question.
Yeah. All right. Can you tell us about this new version of Perry Von Vicious, the human monster truck?
Yeah. It's an interesting thing how a persona evolves over time. I spent a really long time pretending to be a wealthy aristocrat. And that was a lot of fun. And in its era, it worked pretty well. I got some really good traction with it, and people got very familiar with it. Um, and then a couple of years ago, I started vlogging on occasion while I was out and about, and started just being a little bit more myself in my promos, working in some humor, random jokes that would occur during it that were a lot more me than the character. And started to evolve away from it a little bit. And then I started tagging with Rip Byson.
Right.
And the rich snob character and Rip Byson really wouldn't have worked well together. So I kind of just dropped that whole act and started spiking my hair with some gel and wearing a leather vest to the ring covered in spikes that matched his. And that worked pretty well. People were pretty into it. Then, of course, the whole world shut down, and Rip and I had two very different situations. I'm a fair bit older than he is, and as a result, my parents are a fair bit older than his parents. My parents are in their 70s and live, 10 minutes from me. So when there were tapings and things during the initial wave of the pandemic, I really couldn't justify going, because if I caught something and brought it back with me, that meant if my parents needed help with something, I couldn't go help them.
Right.
It just wasn't worth the risk. Rip's parents are pretty young and well off on their own and really don't need him to come over and help with much. So he was able to capitalize on having a bit more freedom. And he was doing a bunch of tapings, and you've seen his work. He went on a singles run, a tear like none other. And I started to realize a few months before things really opened back up that Mad was not reuniting. The tag team was not coming back together. So I had to figure out my own thing. And one day I was looking at some clips of something I did, and I was like, man, I just run people over like a monster truck, and kind of chuckled to myself. So I just tweeted, I'm Perry Von Vicious and I'm the human monster truck, just as a gag. And it got a lot of likes. And I started getting messages from some of my fellow wrestlers going, hey, that's pretty good. Is that like a new character or something? And I hadn't really thought about it. And I just on a lark, because people seem to like it, I changed my display name on Twitter to the human monster truck, and immediately got a bunch of follows from people like in the monster truck community. And like, it's a thing that none of my friends knew, but when I was young, I was obsessed with monster trucks. It was like my life. We had a family friend that actually ran a monster truck on Monster Jam, a truck called American Guardian.
Oh, wow.
And I toured with them when I was in middle school every summer. I would go on the road with them, and really it was just them doing my parents a favor, like, oh yeah, humor the kid. But in my mind, I was part of the crew. Really, all they ever asked me to do was like, can you run to the concession stand and get us some paper towels, that kind of thing. but it meant that I got to travel around and see all these trucks. And then, high school came. I joined a band, started talking to girls, and the monster trucks became a very distant second thought. And then college came, and I kind of drifted away from all of it. And it really wasn't until I made that joke about the gimmick that I was like, oh man, I kind of miss when I was in the monster trucks. And I started looking at specifically the toys I collected as a kid. I started looking at those on eBay, kind of absent-mindedly. And then for my birthday, my wife bought me a couple of the ones from when we were kids. I mean, these are toys that at that point were, 35 years old. And it sent me on a collecting tear. And then a few months later, she bought me a 3D printer for Christmas. And I'd never done any 3D modeling or anything, but I'm a quick learner. I'm a nerd. I'm a smart guy, so I built the 3D printer in about an hour, and by the next day, I had modeled up a really simple. It'll never see the light of day because it was really simple, but a really simple Perry Von Vicious figure, and was printing it just to see if it would work. And it turned out I was actually pretty good at it. So I started actually 3D printing and modeling monster truck toys that never existed, that were all to scale with mine. So like trucks that I wished I had a toy for, but they never made one. Now I have them on my shelf. And that of course led to, the Delmy jokingly calling me the merch god. I do in fact have 3D printed, custom designed Hot Wheels scale Perry Von Vicious monster trucks that I sell at shows.
Well, that knocks off one of my questions about it saying toy maker under your Instagram bio. But on the subject of monster trucks, one wrestling legend, WWE Hall of Famer that is very familiar with monster trucks and even drove her own custom designed monster truck was Medusa, aka Alundra Blaze.
Oh, cool.
She absolutely loves regaling us with stories about her love of monster trucks. Bringing it back to the topic of pro wrestling, I lost my train of thought. Here it is.
Don't forget the Burger King question.
I'll Burger King your voice, James.
Already Burger King.
But, with all the talent from Limitless and Let's Wrestle that we've interviewed here on Wrestling With, I can't believe we've never asked this. Well, wait, no. I think we've asked this once, maybe twice. But when working with Limitless and Let's Wrestle, you have that ring in such enclosed space that going to the outside is almost impossible. Can you tell us about working in that ring specifically?
Yeah, so Let's Wrestle does run shows in real regular venues with an audience where there's plenty of outside action, but I believe what you're referring to in the clips that you'll have seen are from their dojo tapings.
Yes, the dojo tapings.
I will say a few things about that setup. The first is it feels like when I was a trainee. I trained at a number of different wrestling schools, a couple here in the Northeast and a couple out in California, and it's always the same story. It's a ring and a dingy warehouse with no space. So it brings you back to that, which is, that does a lot of things. You find yourself remembering stuff that you haven't done. Certain fundamentals that may have slid away over the years of performing start to come back, and it kind of lights a fire. The other thing that's really interesting, though, is when you are working without a live audience and the only people looking on who can react are your peers who do what you do. You get real creative and you work really hard, because there's nothing, getting an audience to cheer is an incredible feeling. But, after 14 and a half years of doing it, it's not always a huge challenge. I kind of know the things that work and the things that don't. But when you're trying to get a reaction from people who do what you do and have seen everything you do already, and in fact may have just done it themselves moments before and now it's your turn, you get a lot more creative, you work a lot harder. And I have seen matches in that little ring, in that little garage, that dropped my jaw. I've seen matches happen there that just left me completely speechless. And I really do think it's the pressure of performing strictly for your peers. Yeah, it's a really intense situation.
Absolutely, 100% agree. When I was training with the NYWC alongside guys that are now television mainstays like Alex Reynolds, John Silver, Tony Nese, I remember two things from those days. I remember those practice matches scaring the ever loving shit out of me, and the smell of that damn locker room. I mean, it reeked of BO and keto diet farts. But going back to what you said about working in front of your peers, that ideal is there of it trying to bring out the best of you, or the best in you, I should say, and escalate and outperform the prior match, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely it does.
Now, could you tell us about your tag team partner, Rip Byson, and what's a pet peeve you just don't understand about him?
I like that. You started very broad and then got very specific. So Rip, I met Rip about 5 years ago when I moved back to the East Coast from California. Um, in when I first lived here, I was the new guy. I was brand new, and I was, you did whatever shows the local vets could get you on, and you were thankful to do it. And the travel rarely extended past, like, I was like Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island. That was it. Maybe Connecticut. So it was like very much just this little area. Um, and that's just because that was what those guys did. And then I got out to California and I traveled everywhere. Huge long drives with the crews in California. My buddy Levi Shapiro, who's a big name with the United Wrestling Network and with West Coast Pro now. We drove everywhere, hours and hours every weekend for 9 years. And I came back and I knew, I'm not just going to stick around and do the close stuff in New England. I got to get out. I got to go places. And I got to find someone to do that with because there's no way I'm doing those drives on my own. And I was looking around my very first show back, kind of thinking like, there's a couple people I remember. Maybe they'd be up for breaking out a little. And not being too sure who to even ask or who even, could, getting booked far away is hard. Um, and then in the half constructed ring, because, they were setting up for the show, I saw a young Rip Byson with a bandana on his head, a tank top with a huge picture of John Meadows, and Zuba's shorts and slip-on Vans sneakers. And I looked at him and I thought, my God, he dresses just like me. and in fact, the way he's shouting at everyone reminds me of Levi. That's the guy. I kind of knew right away. And so I went and talked to him and I said, "Hey, you wrestling next weekend?" And he told me, "Yeah, man, we're in Rhode Island and we're in Delaware and he named all these places that were far away. And it was him and wrestler ZPB, Zachary Pierre Beaulieu, who was actually my first
Yep.
singles match years and years earlier. And it was the two of them. They were a tag team at the time, and said, "Yeah, we're all over the place. You can hop in the car." And I was like, "Yes, I can." And that was it. We've been on the road everywhere since then. We've been to 2 different provinces of Canada. We've been to 3 different time zones in the U.S. And all by car. We've driven from Massachusetts to Texas and back to New Orleans to Chicago to Nova Scotia, Delaware, everything in between. And largely those largely those trips were because promotions wanted me and Rip to wrestle each other. We had a very long period of time where we wrestled each other almost every weekend. And finally we got sick of it, not because we had bad matches, but because we wanted to do something different. And we decided if we started tagging together, they couldn't book us to wrestle each other. And thus was born our tag team, Mad, Mutually Assured Destruction. Felt like a very appropriate name.
For sure.
And since then, back then, he was doing a very different gimmick. He was he was once described by a promoter as being like Tatanka's kid brother or something, because he was
Tomahawk.
he was Tomahawk at the time. He's of Native American descent, so he decided that was something he could do. And then, a couple years ago, he really sort of found himself. The Rip Byson persona is really exactly who Rip is. He is loud, he is huge, he likes to lift heavy weights, drink lots of protein and energy drinks, and listen to old school metal. That is 1,000% him. As far as pet peeves, he and I would be the first two to tell you that we are not friends. I think the term we've fallen on is workplace associates. Never mind the fact that we've spent at this point well over 1,000 hours driving in cars together. As far as pet peeves, I mean, he hates all of my musical choices. That's not entirely true. He likes Weird Al, and I like a lot of old metal. But as soon as I veer into pop punk or ska, he is miserable and just hates it. So really, arguing over what music to listen to is probably the biggest pet peeve.
So he's not a fan of Taylor Swift.
He would say no, but when the breakdown and Shake It Off comes and the little sort of semi-rap part comes on, you can't get him not to do it. That comes on and he busts it out. He goes.
Okay, fair enough. Scooter, you have a question.
Yes. Now, in all of the matches that are listed, at least on the Cage Match database, there is one match that stands out. Can you tell us about the 5-minute time limit draw you had against Bear Bronson?
Yeah, I can. That was not in front of an audience. That was another in front of your peers moment. That was at a Beyond Wrestling seminar tryout. I'm surprised it made it onto that list, quite frankly, because the footage of it was never released. They told everyone that we had 5 minutes for our match, and a few other people went over a little bit, and they kind of let it go. And then they told him after, hey, you were over. And then we wrestled, and all of a sudden they rang the bell while we were in the middle of wrestling, and we stopped, and they go, that's 5, right on the dot, you're done, get out, and moved on to the next people. We were literally like, to pull back the curtain a little, we were about 20 seconds from the 3 count from the pin. And apparently they were sick of waiting on people. It's fine. That stuff happens. It is weird that is on a list. I don't know who would have put that there. Yeah, I mean, I believe a lot of the updates are done Wikipedia style where people can submit stuff. So it had to have been like one of the other wrestlers. Yeah, like one of the other wrestlers who was there, because that was it. It was just the wrestlers and the promoter. So.
All right. James, I believe you have a question.
Yes, and I might butcher this slightly, but hopefully you'll understand what I'm saying. Can you tell us about Dr. Cube versus Neo Sakimoto 01?
Yeah, I totally can. I think you nailed the pronunciation as much as anyone else does. Um, so Kaiju Big Battle um, is something that I was a big fan of in college. In fact, I was able to dig back once I started working for them and find pictures of myself Halloween while I was in college as Dr. Cube, which they all got a kick out of. Um, the weekend that WrestleMania was in New Orleans, they had Japanese legend, one of the really great Japanese wrestlers of the last 15 years, Daisuke Sekimoto, on the shows because he was a big fan of kaiju. He thought that was hilarious. But you're not going to stick him in a monster suit, not just because he wouldn't fit, but also because you don't hide him behind a costume.
Oh, for sure.
So the first day, one of the people who runs the company basically looked up and down the list of who was there and who was working in costumes and said, well, we know Perry's actually a wrestler. Not everyone they use is like really a wrestler. They have a lot of kids who are like martial arts people or people who are dancers and that kind of stuff. So they get a wide variety of performers in the costumes. But they do employ a few wrestlers. And at the time I was doing a lot of shows for them and they knew that I could do it. So they said, "Do you want to work with Sekimoto?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I do. Who wouldn't?" And the first night, I was a different character than Doctor Cube, and they did a bit where Sekimoto came out of the crowd to arm wrestle me. I was a character who had one gigantic hand and one regular hand, and I used the regular hand to arm wrestle him.
Oh my
And he threw me clear across the ring by my arm, and then proceeded to give me a brain buster through the table. Which of course the audience went nuts for. And then the second night, Sekimoto decided he wanted to do the show again, but he only wanted to do it if we could paint him green like the Incredible Hulk. I don't know why. It was just a thing he decided. So they decided they would call him, and you have the full name in front of you, Neo something Sekimoto. I don't recall quite what it
Neo
all was.
Sakimoto 01.
That's right, Neo Sekimoto 01. Um, so in that match, it was actually a 2-on-1 match. It was me in the Dr. Cube costume, and Rip Byson in the costume of a character called Hell Monkey. You can always tell when Rip Byson is the one in the Hell Monkey costume, because the regular Hell Monkey looks like a red monkey that's wearing cut off shorts made out of surgeon scrubs. When Rip does it, those surgeon shorts are too small for him. He does a lot of heavy leg days, and they would rip to shreds if he tried to put those over his legs. So if you ever see Hell Monkey and he's wearing Zuba's shorts, that's Rip Bison in the costume. And we went out and had a match against Neo Sekimoto 01, where he proceeded to throw us around like crazy, and we broke some fake little cardboard buildings over his head, and then he threw us around like crazy again and pinned us. And he was a delight. He was such a funny guy. The first night, I'm watching him walk around backstage, just picking up parts of the different monster costumes and giggling to himself. And then the night he was all in green, they handed him the paint to paint himself green. You've never seen a 5 foot, he's like 5'7" and like 300 pounds of nothing but muscle. You've never seen a guy shaped like that with a bigger, goofier grin on his face than him rubbing green paint on his tummy and just chuckling to himself. Yeah, he was a delight. He was great.
That's awesome. That's truly awesome. Scooter, you have a question.
Yes. Now, let's bring it back for a second, and here on Wrestling With, we do our research, as you've noted, and we say we like to go beyond the in-ring persona, and something you posted really stood out to me, and I really, really want to know the story behind this. So, can you please tell us about the sandbox your father built?
The sandbox my dad built. Um, wow, that's really specific. I assume I must have tweeted about that.
It was on your Instagram.
Oh, Instagram. Okay. The when I was a kid, my brother and I are both certainly what you would call fair-skinned. We are just shy of translucent, and we were gonna, my dad definitely knew we were going to sunburn playing outside. So as we got to the right age where, something like a sandbox would be real good to have in the yard. He's an engineer and a very handy guy, so he wasn't going to go buy one. He proceeded to build a sandbox for us that had posts at all four corners, and he did an entire wooden shingled roof on top of it so that we would be in the shade when we played. We were real little. Um, and it became like the place that my brother's just a year younger than me. It was like the place we spent our youngest years, was just out in that sandbox constantly, which again, playing with little toy monster trucks, not a bad spot to be. And over the years, it's funny because the structure from that still stands at my parents' house. But it has been repurposed a number of times. When we got a little bit older, and my dad was, we put in an above ground pool because, when you hit your teens, you're not so interested in a sandbox, but a pool's real nice to have. Um, he actually pulled the whole sandbox up and out from where it was, but we kept the entire roof piece as one solid piece. And we put in, concrete footers and great big beams, and used it as the roof on top of the pool deck that we then built for the pool. And then, of course, again, my parents being in their 70s, they're not exactly dying to go for a New England swim these days. So the pool is not in the yard anymore. Now there's just a nice little garden with a little pathway, but using the same uprights that the deck stood on, my dad cut them off lower and lowered the entire deck down to ground level, and lowered the roof down, and now it's a gazebo where my parents, they eat in the nice months. They eat most of their meals out there, and spend the day out there watching the birds in the yard. So it's a structure that's been a part of my life forever, and something I did not expect to ever discuss on a podcast. Yeah, deep dives.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Uh, James, I believe you have a question.
Can you tell us about the battle royal you was in that ended with you and Rip Byson in a test of strength?
I will say it didn't end that way, but it ended for us that way.
Right.
We were on a show for a company that never even had a name. It was like a one-off out in, I couldn't even name the town. It was on Cape Cod, middle of nowhere. Didn't have a huge draw, but had a really nice setup in this big outdoor tent. Really nice looking. And Rip and I were just there to be in a battle royal. So we didn't have anything else on the show, but it was very clear that this was going to be one of those shows where you were given a little creative leeway, if I can put it that way. So when the match started, we immediately grabbed a test of strength. Not exactly a normal battle royal strategy. And I backed him to a corner where he walked up the ropes, and then I shook his hands so he fell onto the apron while we still have the test of strength. And I climbed up the ropes to fight him, and he jumped down off the apron and pulled me down, so we both landed on the floor, eliminated, still holding a test of strength. And we fought in the test of strength all the way through the audience and out the back of the tent. But the story doesn't end there, because 2 matches later, we decided, because we thought it was funny, still in the test of strength, to fight back through the crowd before the match started, while the two people in that match it was actually a four-way. There's four guys standing in the ring, because I know one of them was Slick Wagner Brown, who's a New England legend. Because when we rolled in the ring, still in the test of strength and still fighting, he had his face buried in the top turnbuckle, laughing hysterically. He could hide his face all he wanted, but when Slick Wagner Brown laughs, you hear it. And we could hear him, and we fought back through the ropes and up the entry ramp through the curtain to the locker room. And the entire audience broke out in applause because we had come back through and finished the punchline. But I'm here to tell you that too was not the end of the story. We waited about 4 more matches, and we did it again. We came back through the curtain into the ring and out through the audience. And then at the end of the night, when the main event was starting, we got the sound guy involved with the gag and had him play the final countdown.
Oh my God.
And when it hit, we came through the audience still in the test of strength. Only when we got in the ring, we had the other 2 guys in the main event somehow wormed their way also into the test of strength. So we were all fighting.
Like a box test of strength?
Yeah. It was like a square test of strength that we kind of did a big circle like a merry-go-round. And then split up the test of strength. So I was back with Rip again. And we went back through the curtain, and the music stopped. And before the main event could really start, the audience went completely nuts, because to them that was the final punchline of the show. It wasn't a huge audience, but it was a standing ovation. And so then, because it felt right to us, we were about halfway through getting changed out of our gear, like one boot unlaced, you got a towel around your neck, when we realized the main event was ending. And I looked at Rip and I said, we had ridden up with ZPB. I said, hey, you want to go stand on the roof of ZPB's car still doing the test of strength while everyone's leaving in the parking lot?
Oh my God.
So we absolutely did. We went out and we're standing up there, and ZPB saw us and was not thrilled, because, we're 2 heavy guys on the roof of his car. So he came out and got in the car and started it.
Oh
And of
my
course,
God.
we weren't going to be able to ride it. There was no way. So instead, we fought down off the back of it, still in the test of strength. And ZPB figured out what we wanted to do, and so he walked over and opened the back door of the car, and we test of strength fought into the car,
Oh my
shut
God.
the door,
Oh my God. Oh my
and
God.
drove off honking the horn while the entire parking lot cheered us on. We had to wait like 20 minutes up the street to make sure everyone left before we went back to get our stuff.
Oh my God. You have me in stitches.
Yeah. When it's funny when there's not. That's the opposite of when you do the shows just in front of your peers. That was a show where we felt no pressure, so we just did whatever we thought was fun.
That was a great story. Thank you. Now, maybe this is more of a serious note. Can you tell us about having your own action figure and even a few customs made by fans?
Yeah. So I do have a few custom figures that were made by fans, which is always like the coolest. The idea that a fan, someone that I don't personally know, watched me wrestle and then took the time to. I mean, the detail on these figures is pretty outstanding. The fact that means they had to have gone online and found pictures to use as references while they were custom painting a figure. Uh, so cool. And then they gave it to they gave them to me as gifts. Even cooler. So I definitely I keep those on a shelf where I can see them at all times. And then I do have a couple figures that I've made. I have one that I've sold. It is not posable. It was sort of I mentioned earlier the first time I ever kind of made one as a test to see if I could. It was sort of the next step from that when I got a little bit better at adding details and printing things. That I've sold at shows, and it's a popular item. I'm currently out, and I'm gonna call that one sold out and done. And I'm working on a new one that's posable. And yeah, I in fact just got a new high powered good laptop for when I do
Ooh.
my 3D modeling, because it takes some horsepower under the hood to do that stuff. Um, and then I also have a couple Perry action figures from when I was doing some tests to see if I could take parts from another different action figure and put them together and make a mold and then cast it in resin and paint it. And it turned out that I I absolutely could. The only problem was that was a project I did when I was out with an injury. I had a dislocated rib,
Ooh.
and just around the time I was like, "Hey, this really works. I should start producing these." Was when I was healthy again and started having bookings every weekend. So I just never had the time to make them. So I just have one really nice test one that I made that's sitting on a shelf. So yeah, I do sort of have this one shelf in the house that has this collection of different Perry figures. Most of them are gifts from fans, but then there's a couple that are designs that I've worked on. And yeah, I find the ones from fans to be incredibly flattering, and the ones that I've made of myself to be a very fulfilling project.
All right. That's awesome. Scooter, you have a question.
Yes. Now, one of my secret guilty pleasures is the show Phineas and Ferb, and there is a character on the show called Perry the Platypus. Any chance of you being Perry Von Platypus this Halloween?
um, you know, I don't think so. Phineas and Ferb was just after my era of watching little kids programming.
Ooh. You
I'm
missed a good
I'm
one.
I hear that about a lot of shows. There's a lot of shows that people say were really great that were just like, they came on TV right at the time when I was like joining a band and talking to girls. Um, SpongeBob SquarePants being one that came on right as I was just aging out of watching. Um,
You didn't
but
watch SpongeBob SquarePants?
I'm older than you might think.
I don't know. I might be able to give you run for your money age-wise.
I was gonna say, try me.
I will be turning 38 this year.
I too am about to be 38. It's
Good old class of 1984.
Yep. But I was yeah, I will say there's a company that I don't know if they're going to run again. That after the pandemic, it's hard to tell who's coming back and who's not. Um, but there's a company in Rhode Island called Wrestle Party, and they had like weird, goofy costume matches, and they brought me in one time just so I could be Parrot Von Vicious. And they made the costume for me, and I was like, well, this sounds like a good time, easy enough. And I just went in and did all of Coco Beware's moves. um, and they even told me, they said, is this something you would consider doing? Like, they really acted like I was above working for them, which felt very silly. I'm not above much of anything. And I told them I'll do it on one condition: my entrance theme has to be the Tiki Room theme from Disneyland.
I am an
Yeah.
absolute Disney nut.
Oh, I mean, if you've seen my Twitter bio, I'm very much the same. The parks are a huge part of my life.
I'm kind of surprised you didn't use the Macarena version of the Tiki Room.
I honestly I wanted to find like a punk rock version of it, because the venue that they ran was like a punk club. I thought that would be pretty cool, but they're mostly unintelligible once they've translated into that genre.
Very true.
Now, moving on. Are you going to be bringing back your vlog, and will it be called Hot Dogs and Handshakes?
So I have brought back the vlog. I'm 2 episodes back in now. I did an episode where Rip and I went to Monster Jam, and I just had an episode where I did a deep dive on how I make my 3D printed Perry Von Vicious monster truck toys. Um, and I'll have another one, depending on depending on how much editing I get done. Another one that'll kind of follow me and Rip Byson and Travis Huckabee and Delmy Exo's excursion down to Tennessee from this past week. Um, as far as the name Hot Dogs and Handshakes goes, I've dropped the name since. I'm just calling it the PVV vlog now. I was gonna call it Perry Vlog Vicious. It felt like a mouthful.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Yeah, right. It's hard to pass on that, but I'm just keeping it simple for the moment. But as far as the old name for it, Hot Dogs and Handshakes, that was based on a saying in wrestling that you may have heard.
Oh yeah.
When you're on a not great show and there's either no pay or very little pay, you jokingly say, "Oh yeah, I went and I worked for a hot dog and a handshake," because
Right.
almost every show has hot dogs left over at the concession stand after, and the wrestlers kind of flock to get the free hot dogs. Um, which yeah, I stopped using the name just because I've seen a few other people using the phrase for other ventures. And I feel like I took a long break from the vlog. They can have that name. It had its time with me.
All right. Yeah. Let's get into a controversial subject. Pineapple on pizza. What's your stance?
For a really long time, Hawaiian pizza was my favorite pizza when I was a teenager. Honestly, again, it all goes back to the tiki room. Uh, I don't think there's a wrong place for pineapple. Uh, and also I don't think I've ever had a pizza that I disliked. Obviously, some pizzas are superior to others, but at its worst, it's still pizza.
Fair
So
enough.
what's not to love?
Hey, yeah, absolutely. What's your spirit Pokemon?
My spirit Pokemon. Pokemon is another thing that I never played or watched. My particular strain of nerddom somehow missed Pokemon and Magic the Gathering and D&D. Uh, but I assure you, I'm as
You're
nerdy
breaking
as
Scooter's
anyone
heart.
into any of those things.
Now, I nerded out over 2/3 of those: Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. But two things that James and I really can nerd out on: comics, DC and Marvel, and Star Wars.
Nice.
Yeah. Weirdest question you'll be asked on a wrestling podcast. Would you ever consider wrestling a Rock? Not Dwayne Johnson, Scooter,
Not the country.
an actual Rock.
Wrestling against a Rock.
Yes.
Yeah, I would. Why not? I mean, I've wrestled fish. I've wrestled monkeys and various other animals. I've wrestled space creatures. Yeah, I've wrestled competitors of every potential possible background and descriptor I can imagine, except for wrestling a literal rock.
So, no inanimate objects?
Oh gosh, have I wrestled any? I might have. Uh, you know, I'm a lot of matches and a lot of years in, so it's possible. I'd have to have a good game plan. You can't take them for granted.
All right.
Actually, I believe you are the guest with the second most in-ring experience that we've interviewed, next to Brutal Bob Evans.
Oh, Bob. Yeah, I'll say this: Bob was one of the first promoters to book me when I was new. I was super new, and he gave me great matches. I got to wrestle Mike Bennett when I was like a year in. So, it's hard for me to say anything but good about Bob.
That's awesome. We love Bob too. Uncle Bob.
Old Uncle Bob.
All right. We also love Tracy Smothers on the show. Do you know the acronym for Doug? THUG.
I do, and I always have to pause and think about it because I watch so few. Like whenever I was watching ECW, ECW is the place where I would have seen him.
Yes.
And whenever I watched, if there was a microphone in anyone's hands, I skipped ahead.
Oh,
So I could, but it would take me quite a while to get to it.
good on.
T is for terrible. H is for hell. U is for ugly. And G is for jail. 'Cause a thug can't spell.
Ah, there it is.
Scooter, you have a colossal question.
Yes, this is Kaliko's colossal question named after our third Kaliko Yachts, who is not here with us for this today. Hypothetically, let's say they're making a movie about the wrestling career of Perry Von Vicious. Now, every movie has a soundtrack. What would be the top 3 to 5 songs on the soundtrack to the Perry Von Vicious wrestling career movie?
They would definitely. I mean, they would have to use "Automatic" by Less Than Jake. That's my current entrance theme and probably my favorite theme I've used. And I've had a few different good ones, but this is the one that is the most near and dear to my heart, far and away. A band that I love and I've seen live so many times. Um, I think any good movie has travel montages happening. So I would think they'd have to use the Biggest Ball of Twine in Minnesota by Weird Al Yankovic. Um, that would definitely have to go in there. I don't want them all to be Weird Al, but that's that usually would end up being my proclivity. I think I'd like them to use the Simple song by The Residents at some point. It's so creepy and so weird and so obscure. Most people, if you mention The Residents, don't even know who they are. I mean, technically, no one knows who they are, but most people have never heard of the band.
Right.
Yeah, if you get the chance to look them up, people don't know who they are because they've never shown their faces. Which I adore. They're so weird. They have eyeballs for heads.
Kind of like Daft Punk?
Yeah, I love a costume gimmick band. Which I guess my fourth pick would probably have to be the song "Awesome Forces" by the Aquabats.
Oh my god, I love the Aquabats! Oh my god. Yeah, back in my younger years, I was part of the off-Broadway cast of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and we would do pre-shows before the show, and Aquabats pool party was in our rotation frequently. Absolutely love pool party.
Yep. Pizza Day. Super rad. I'm trying to think like years ago what would have been the big hits before the more recent albums. But yeah, I love the Aquabats. And then I would probably have them pick something from one of the bands that I played in, but mostly just because I think there were a lot of songs there that were pretty good that no one outside of a very niche crowd at various Warped Tour stops years ago would have heard.
actually love that answer.
Oh, a wide variety of songs there.
Definitely the most eclectic for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I love yeah, novelty music is very near and dear to my heart, and most of my picks there definitely fall under novelty.
Now that we've established the top songs to the Perry Von Vicious wrestling career movie soundtrack, the next question is, do you lock those songs in? Are you comfortable with the songs you've chosen, or do you want to make any changes?
Do you lock them in?
Wait, say again. Am I comfortable with those?
Yes. Are you comfortable with those songs you've chosen? Do you lock them in?
I can't imagine any reason I'd have to change any of them. I think I'm locking them in.
All right, they are locked in, and the soundtrack is set.
All right. On a more serious note, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Whenever I've been asked that in job interviews, I very seriously answer to them, either working here or co-hosting SNL alongside the Muppets. And I know that's a very silly answer to give, especially at a job interview, but I do have a perfect record with job interviews. I've never interviewed for a job and not gotten it, and I attribute it to that question.
The way you were going, I really thought you were going to give the Mitch Hedberg answer.
Remind me of Mitch Hedberg's answer.
I'll be celebrating the 5-year anniversary of you asking me that question.
That's pretty good. In 5 years, I see myself in a mirror.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I think in 5 years, it's a toss up. You know, I've been kind of toying with the idea for some time, and I've not really made a secret about it that I might just call it a day on in ring performing when I turn 40.
Hmm.
But I've had a lot of pushback on that from my peers. I think my wife would be relieved for me to be wrapped up, but I know uh, specifically Johnny Torres, Delmi Exo, and Rip Byson, the other four members of what we lovingly refer to as the Byson office, alongside myself. Uh, they have all expressed to me that they really don't think I should stop when I turn 40. So we'll see. Maybe there'll be bad influences on me and I'll keep going.
All right. Gotta get those bad influences uh, on Perry Von Vicious in the next 2 years.
Yep.
What is a match people should go out of their way to see that best shows off what Perry Von Vicious is all about?
I It's a recent match. It is from Pro Wrestling Grind, on a show of theirs called Antisocial. The entire show is streaming on IWTV, and it is me against Blue Thunder Jay Freddy. Uh, First, fantastic that his nickname is Blue Thunder because there's a very famous monster truck called Blue Thunder. And in fact, there's two famous monster trucks called Blue Thunder, one from the Monster Jam era and one from the 80s that I grew up with. So the irony there was not lost on me that I was fighting the only other person with a monster truck name. Jay Freddy is an absolute. I mean, if you're not familiar with him, you got to get familiar with him. He's been to Japan. He's worked for All Japan and Zero One. He is a legend in this area. We debuted within a few months of each other back in the day, and he is the best of the best. He's so good, and we did not hold back on each other. We went to war pretty good. He did win, so it is a match where you won't see some of my trademark parry moves. You won't see me gorilla press someone and throw them clear out of the ring. You won't see a parry go round. Um, but I don't think that matters as much. You know, you watch that match and you can really see how I envision myself in the ring. You know, we both that match was nothing but heart from the two of us, and it's something I'm really proud of. And if you want to see something with some of my more classic standard moves, I was just on uncharted territory a week ago, teaming with Delmy Exo and Travis Huckabee as Team Grind against a team of much smaller opponents. And boy, if there's anything I can capitalize on, it's small opponents, because I am a large guy, and I chucked those kids around with reckless abandon, and it was a delight. Yeah, that one I got all the greatest hits in. So.
Is there something we can find on YouTube?
Yeah, there is. Limitless Wrestling uploaded a match from when they were doing their tapings during COVID. The one set of tapings I made it out to for their show, The Road, and it is Perry Von Vicious against Iron Rip Byson. And this is another match where we went to absolute war with each other, doing stuff that, by all rights, we just shouldn't have done. It was a reckless and violent match, and watching it, you would have no idea that it was filmed at 9 a.m. after getting 3 hours of sleep and having both wrestled 3 matches the day before.
I didn't think wrestlers got up that early.
We don't if we can help it.
Unless you're American Beetle. I mean, he brought a friggin' door to the ring.
Yeah, he did, which I mean, you saw the match. That was a mistake on his part. It was a different kind of brutal. Beetle and I have actually gone to war a lot of times. That's the only time where I was Perry Von Vicious, when I wrestled Beetle. But if you ever find any kaiju big battle matches that are a character called Erebus versus American Beetle, that is also me. And yeah, one of my absolute favorite opponents in the world is the guy who at the time was American Beetle for Kaiju Big Battle.
Wasn't it? I can't remember his name. Was a British guy?
No, he certainly was not. You can actually see him wrestling now as himself for the first time ever. He wrestled for Kaiju for 10 years and now has left the company. They had him wrestling other places as Dr. Cube, and then very suddenly decided that they didn't like that anymore. So they told him he couldn't use the character, but he was already booked a lot of places. So he still wrestles in scrubs, but just as himself now, and he is now known as Dr. Redacted. And he is fantastic.
I remember when they started, it was a British guy in the costume, and they had a Spanish person backstage at the microphone doing the voice work.
It's possible that when he debuted, he may have been a British guy. The costumes at Kaiju Big Battle kind of got passed around a lot, so like different people would be in it at different times. But the person who sort of was canonically known as American Beetle, like 9 times out of 10, a Beetle match, is the guy who would now be known as Dr. Redacted.
All right. Yeah.
Now that you've kind of shared these little secrets of Kaiju Big Battle with us, does that mean they will be, possibly coming to reclaim the head of Dr. Cube, because you have made us privy to these bits of information?
They used to be a lot more strict about it. Nowadays they don't really mind so much. They know that I've been on podcasts and stuff and been pretty open about who I am. I've taken pictures in the back with like the mask off. So like if you dug through my Instagram, there's a picture of me and Sekimoto together, and I've got the cube head under my arm, and we're both giving a thumbs up. It's hard to go work for them and career-wise get nothing from it, right?
Right.
If you're not seen, no one knows it was you. So I got to work a legend, Daisuke Sekimoto, 2 nights in a row. No one knows it. I got I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation, but Konosuke Takeshita.
Konosuke Takeshita. He was on Dynamite a few weeks back
Yeah.
against Adam Cole.
Yep. The very last Mania weekend before the pandemic, I wrestled against him, and I'm gonna blank on the guy's name, the owner of DDT Wrestling in Japan. And we had a anywhere match where we fought out into the streets of Brooklyn and full on stopped traffic by doing a brainbuster on top of the ring truck.
The DDT wrestling owner, was that Shintaro Muto?
No. Oh, wait. Yes, that is the name. But yes, I got to wrestle them, but no one knows because I was in a monster costume. I mean, if you look carefully enough, you can see my Weird Al Yankovic socks sticking out of my sneakers, so that's a giveaway.
Oh, so we found the giveaway. But it
Yep.
does seem like Kaiju Big Battle, the first rule of Kaiju Big Battle is we don't talk about Kaiju Big Battle.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, that I think they were much more strict about that years ago. But I think you know, on podcasts, I'll say it. I certainly wouldn't, post a video talking about it on my like Twitter or something.
Right.
Yeah, got to know the limitations.
Just back to the question, the match between you and Rip from Limitless Wrestling, we'll put that in the description of the video below for anybody that wants to check it out after the interview if they haven't already. All right. And since we are nearing the conclusion of this interview, we are wrestling with the 8 questions of doom.
Oh.
This is our speed round, our bonus round, the round where we see who you really are. Are you ready?
I'm as ready as I'm gonna be.
Excluding yourself, greatest wrestler of all time.
Kenta Kobashi.
Worst wrestler.
Is that still excluding me?
Yes, excluding yourself.
Okay, excluding Perry Von Vicious, let's say Vicious and Delicious.
I will accept that answer. You're main eventing WrestleMania for the World Championship. Who is your opponent?
Probably Iron Rip Byson. Statistically, it would be Iron Rip Byson.
Yeah, it seems that way, doesn't it?
Yep.
If you could come out to anyone's entrance music, past or present, who would it be?
Probably Sami Zayn's theme. I love ska so much, and it sounds like a Less Than Jake song.
All right. Finish the sentence. Kayfabe is
irrelevant in 2022.
Squats. Oh no, just good.
For kayfabe is, we also would have accepted it's quite good on toast.
Oh.
Squash, fruit or vegetable?
A short match on a Saturday morning show. I'm gonna say fruit. I have a garden, and we definitely say, oh, the plant that squash plant is fruiting. So yeah, fruit.
And that you would be correct. All right. New Japan wrestler Taichi. His ring gear gets smaller every year, revealing more of himself to the world. My question: what is the appropriate trunks to butt cheek ratio for ring gear?
For Taichi specifically, or for anyone?
For anybody.
I think the minimum acceptable has got to be a 75-25 split. 75% trunks, 25% butt cheeks. That's minimum. Try to keep it above that. I think is a safe call.
I love when we get Matt answers to that question, Scooter.
Oh, indeed we do. Can never have enough math about the butt cheek question.
All right. And now it is time for the last question, the main event, the thing everybody wants to know. Have you ever had a conversation with a stranger in a supermarket about Darby Allin?
I don't think prior to this question I've ever had a conversation with anyone about Darby Allin.
And that is the correct answer. And that will conclude this interview. Thank you so much for coming on and putting up with us, Perry, with all the craziness that led up to this interview.
Hey, no worries at all. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much, Perry.
And once again, can you tell us where can we find everything Perry Von Vicious?
Yeah, you can find me all over social media at Perry Von Vicious on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, easily found on Facebook, although I try not to use it that much because it's not that important to me. As far as merch, Brainbuster Tees, you can search Perry Von Vicious, or you can follow the link that's in all of the bios I have on all my social media pages. And as far as where you can see Perry Von Vicious, usually I would tell you, obviously, keep your eyes on my social media. I like to promote every single show I'm on and every single company that'll have me. But the safest bets are Pro Wrestling Grind, Blitzkrieg Pro, Let's Wrestle, Limitless Wrestling. And yeah, other than that, just keep your eyes peeled because you never know where Perry's going to pop up.
And of course, merchandise and your YouTube page.
Yep. For the t-shirts, Brainbuster Tees, and that's the best spot for those. If you're looking for Perry Von Vicious toys, I do design and print my own toys. You can send me a DM on any of my social medias for that. I haven't set up a store space online for it, but I do ship toys, so you can order them from anywhere. And my YouTube is youtube.com/Perry Von Vicious. That you will see vlog episodes, mountains of promos, and hundreds of matches at this point. I've had that page since I started back in 2008. So,
wow. All right, and you don't even need to type it into your Google machine. All of those links will be in the description of the video below, both on YouTube and Castbox. You've been listening to him for just over an hour and a half. Buy a damn short. If you like what we're doing, please like, subscribe, comment, both on YouTube and Castbox. Of course, this was sponsored by Rogue Energy and Player One Coffee. Join us next Wednesday for another incredible interview. You can follow everything Wrestling with Entertainment related at Wrestling with E, both on Twitter and Instagram for latest upcoming interviews, links, news, etc., etc. You can follow me at JamesJ993. You can follow Kaliko at I am Kaliko. And where can we find Scooter?
As always, you can find me on Twitter at Scooter Dust. Find myself, James, and now Ryan Dust, the three-man team, hosting The Remix on YouTube, a premium audio companion experience for all your WWE premium live event needs on alternate commentary the next time we come to you, July 3rd, Money in the Bank. You're not going to want to miss it. And also revel in all my Twitch antics, along with Rico Constantino Jr. and the rest of the Smoking Dragons clan, twitch.tv/Smoking Dragons. Also want to mention, got a big interview coming.
No spoilers.
Not going to mention anything, but you're going to want to stay tuned for this.
All right. Now, Perry, when I say wrestling with, you say entertainment.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
For our very special guest, Perry Von Vicious, Kaliko Yacht, Scooter Dust, I'm James J, and this has been Wrestling with
Entertainment.
Hey folks, this is the Colossal Mike Law, and you are listening to Wrestling with Entertainment. Enjoy the show, support these guys. We appreciate it very much. We'll see you at ringside.